I'm Micah Murtis.
And I'm Rick Davis.
And this is Weird Creighton History. Rick, you've been here a while.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be reductive, but you've been at Creighton a while. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Or rather, tell our listeners, our potential hypothetical, we don't know if they exist yet, listeners, who you are.
Yes. Hello, potential listeners. I'm Rick Davis, and I've been at Creighton University for 28 years now in the Department of Communications and Marketing, and I'm very grateful for my experience of being the Creighton University Magazine editor for the last 25 years. And I love the stories of Creighton, and that's why I love this idea of Weird Creighton History and those little nuggets that really give this place personality.
I think we got it that time. I'm going to just keep recording.
Let's go.
For the listeners, just to reveal behind the curtain, that was probably our third or fourth attempt, but I think we got it. All right, so in Weird Creighton History, with each episode of this brand new podcast, I will be telling Rick a story about or related to the history of Creighton University. He will never know the topic beforehand. In some cases, the history will be something Rick is familiar with, perhaps even lived through. In others, it will be something he's never even heard of. In every episode, Rick is encouraged to interrupt me as often.
I will do it. Yes, absolutely, Mike. I'm looking forward to that part.
All right. Yeah, you have good practice. All right. So we don't have any idea how this is going to go.
Absolutely
We don't
not.
know if it's going to be good or make sense or if they'll let us do it or if it's going to ruin our careers. But I figure, let's just try it.
Let's give it a try. Let's
Okay.
go for it.
All right. So, Rick,
Yes.
for our first Weird Creighton History, do you know the one about the pile of manure left on Creighton University's doorstep?
No, I do not, but I'm looking forward to hearing more about this.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Well, I'll get to the reason for the manure in a second.
Okay.
First, I'm going to back up a few years to 1878, when Creighton University opened as Creighton College. In the beginning...
I wasn't there. Okay, I've been here a long time, but I was not at that event, Mike.
You were an undergraduate.
Yeah, I was an undergrad.
There are probably email chains that go back that far. I'll get to the reason for the manure, but first I'm going to back up to 1878.
Sure.
In the beginning, Creighton had just one building, which stood on the brow of a hill sloping away to the east and north. This was the original core structure of what we now call Creighton Hall, and before that, the administration building. In the university's early years, this structure was known simply as the main building. That's how I'm going to refer to it the rest of this episode.
Okay, and that'd be great.
Did you know that it was the main building before that?
I didn't know the main building, but I was an undergraduate here from 84 to 88, and it was the administration building.
Do you know
and
when
then
it changed
later
to Creighton
become
Hall?
Creighton Hall. I don't know the exact year that it became Creighton Hall.
That's
but
probably
there
a
was
future
that could be a
podcast.
future podcast. I'm looking forward to it.
When Creighton opened, campus grounds measured just 526 by 561 feet.
Wow.
In its first decade, Creighton College abutted just one street, California Street.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, no city...
And California Street at that time, that's the cobblestone street intersecting campus.
Yeah, it's essentially the mall now.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
So at the time, no city streets, including California, were paved, making Omaha a big, sloppy mud pit for much of the year. The horse carriage journey from the train station to campus was reportedly a deeply unpleasant one. So it wasn't a great first impression of our city.
Imagine.
Amid this sea of mud, Creighton's main building was considered to be one of Omaha's finest. In anticipation of 24th Street, which was expected to be one of the Omaha's busiest and most important thoroughfares, the main building was built to face east. Yet, how many more years do you think it would take for 24th Street to be opened up through campus?
I'm not sure.
30
You stumped me.
32.
32 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Things take a while.
Take a while.
sometimes.
Took a little bit time there. Yeah.
Well, so you came after basically California Street was closed to traffic.
Yes,
it was
I
open
never saw
until 78.
Yeah, I never saw it open to traffic there. It was a cobblestone street, and then they redid that too. So when I was here, the cobblestones were a little bit uneven, easy to trip and fall on that. But then they redid that to be a little smoother and redo the mall. So, but yeah, I never saw where traffic was going down California Street.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say late 70s is when they moved over. And
That's
then it slowly became the mall over the next decade or
That's
so.
what I think too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, back to
the story.
beginning.
All right.
When Creighton College, as it was known, first opened, directly east of the building stood a large two-story house. The house had a stable located just 50 feet from the main building's entrance. The house and stable were an inconvenience to Creighton in a number of ways. Chief grievance being the 4-foot fence that stood between campus and the stable. The fence created a dead-end alley for people traveling north to Creighton, and students and guests would often have to climb the fence just to enter campus. In his memoirs, Creighton's renowned Jesuit astronomer, Father William Riggy, called the property a galling eyesore. The owner of the property, a Mr. Riley, offered to sell Creighton the adjoining lot, but he wanted good money for it. He asked for $8,000. The college countered with $6,000, and they never reached an agreement. College reportedly believed
They couldn't have gone for 7?
They could have gone for 7.
Okay.
Apparently it stalled out immediately. There was no counter.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. I heard later the diocese found out about it, and they were like, "Why didn't you just pay him $8,000? Like it would have been fine."
And this is a personal residence.
Personal residence, personal lot. Well, it was a farmer, and he had a tenant in the house.
Okay.
So somebody else lived in there, but yeah, Mr. Riley was the guy who owned that.
And this is to the south of the main building.
To the east.
To the east of the main.
So it'd basically be to the east of the main building, where 24th Street is basically.
Got it. Okay.
And when that was all even and before the grading and everything.
Okay.
So just imagine 50 feet in front of the to the east on 24th Street of Creighton Hall was a horse stable.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So that, weird.
They didn't have the walk signal at that time.
They didn't have the walk signal.
Okay.
Yeah, just the horses. But honestly, probably a bunch of horses were where the walk signal was. Just to help everyone visualize this. So Father Riggy referred in his memoirs as the location as a galling eyesore. Mr. Riley asked for $8,000. The college countered with $6,000. They never reached an agreement. The college was confident because they reportedly believed Riley would cave in soon, as he was exposed on 3 sides to, quote, the pranks of noisy students.
Interesting.
Yeah. This didn't happen.
Okay.
Creighton College was sorely mistaken, and it was a mistake the college and its founding family would pay for dearly.
So our students were very respectful.
Apparently not. Yeah, I guess they were pretty pranky. If nothing else, they were climbing the fence all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like it was just Riley knew that he could get a buck out of it because he figured Creighton was going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, of course it did quite a bit in that direction.
Yeah.
So we needed it. So he was just holding out for the most money he could possibly get.
And I'm sure he'd be astonished at what we've done with 24th Street now.
Oh, yeah.
With that corridor. It's amazing.
It's quite a bit better. It's, I would say it's probably a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than it used to be. I mean, what's really crazy to me reading about a lot of this history is you look back and it's, there are stories about bears wandering onto campus.
No kidding.
Yeah, so Omaha was kind of a frontier city, and Creighton was really isolated from it. Just this one building, and people think Creighton Hall is this big thing, but really just imagine just the core of it. It looked like, it was still fairly large for Omaha at the time, but it looked like kind of just a giant old schoolhouse.
At this time, Micah, do you know, would Creighton have been considered on the outskirts of the city? I mean, now we're very much in the heart of the city. Mm-hmm. Would we have been considered at that time kind of on the outskirts, or?
I think completely, yeah.
Okay.
There were, it was farmland, essentially, as far as I knew. And I know that they had horse carriages go to a certain point, but it was a while before even the horse carriage lines came out that far.
Okay.
I think you had to do a little walking or on your own horse riding for a little while.
And how far are we into Creighton's history? So we opened in 1878.
Oh, yeah.
Where are we now in relation to that?
Good question. Okay. So at this point, we're up to the 1880s, so not very far into it.
Okay. Right.
Just Creighton wanted some land. The farmer or the landowner wasn't going to give it.
Okay.
At least not for a certain price. So during this point, just remember we're pausing at this negotiation that's not going anywhere.
Correct.
But at this point in our story, we need to introduce a guy named John McCreary. Have you heard of this fella?
I have not. No, but I'm interested in it.
He was the brother-in-law of Ed and John Creighton.
Okay.
There's not a lot known about him. He was born in Ohio. He made his fortune in railroad, telegraph line construction, broom manufacturing, and other business ventures. It was seemingly through his work on the transcontinental telegraph line construction with the Creighton brothers that McCreary met and married their sister, Mary Creighton. Not to be confused with Mary Lucretia Creighton.
Right. Yeah. So we all know of Mary Lucretia Creighton and Sarah Emily.
Yeah.
And this is their sister.
No, sorry. This is Ed and John's sister.
Ed and John's sister.
Named Mary.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. So they were, they were related to McCreary through their sister.
Okay.
Married him.
Okay.
So they got married. McCreary came to Omaha as one of the small frontier town's first pioneers.
Sure.
Like the Creighton brothers, he became a businessman, landowner, and prominent figure in the community. He had a mansion on North 24th Street that was renowned throughout the community as one of the town's finest homes. According to an old newspaper story I found, the mansion once nearly burned down when the hen the McCrearys kept in the kitchen knocked over a lamp.
Oh, no.
So that nearly happened.
Oh, my gosh.
John McCreary and John Creighton did not get along.
Okay.
They seemingly detested each other. I could not find the reason for the animosity. I really couldn't. Later on, there were lawsuits and disputes over the will, and there was like bad blood between some of the families. Okay. But it seems like the vibes between John Creighton and John McCreary soured pretty early on.
So just to set people up, Ed Creighton is older.
Yes, yeah. Ed Creighton was older. Ed Creighton died, I believe, in 1974. Okay. Does that sound right?
And that was his wife, was
Mary
Lucretia, who established in her will the money for Creighton University. So those Ed Creighton and Mary Lucretia Creighton, and John is the younger brother of Ed, and he's married to Sarah Emily.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a good point, because not everybody knows this.
Right, the Creighton history.
I always assume everybody knows about the family, but yeah, so Mary Lucretia established in her will the gift that founded Creighton University. Really, for the next, I think it was 20 years after that, after Mary Lucretia's death, John Creighton and Sarah Emily Creighton were really, if not the sole benefactors of Creighton University, pretty close to it.
Yeah, I understand they did a lot for the medical school and a lot of donations to the church, and very influential in the community and at Creighton and getting us up and running.
The church and the Jesuits really helped bring Creighton along, and I think there were a few people in the city who helped, but when they needed something, when they needed a new building, when they needed science equipment or new stuff for the observatory, they went to John Creighton and he wrote him a check. So, I mean, Creighton probably, we talk a lot about that gift, but Creighton probably doesn't exist without John Creighton too, because he kind of kept us afloat during a time that was pretty wild in Omaha.
Absolutely. So I think we've got the family connections correct here. Okay.
So I know John Creighton's probably he is easily one of the most important people in this university's history. He did not like John McCreary, and John McCreary did not like him.
Did they say why? Did you have any idea of why they didn't like each other?
I couldn't figure out why. Okay. They worked together on the transcontinental telegraph line, and he married his sister, but I don't know. I like my brother-in-law just fine, but I understand people who don't. So now we go back to the main building where our story began.
Okay.
The Jesuits and Mr. Riley still hadn't negotiated a sale of the abutting house and stable. Seeing an opportunity to make a profit and mess with his brother-in-law John Creighton at the same time, John McCreary swooped in and bought Riley's property for $8,000.
Ooh, ouch.
So the first Jesuit faculty kept daily logs of this. I found it. It's all written down.
Yeah.
So we have a play-by-play of how the negotiations went down from here.
Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So in 1885, this is where we're at now. This was shortly after McCreary bought the property. Okay. The Jesuits went to McCreary and they said, "Would you sell this property?" And he said, "I would sell it for $20,000.
Holy
so $12,000 more than he paid for it." He also told the Jesuits that, quote, "There's one man who ought to buy it for you," referring to his brother-in-law, John Creighton.
John Creighton.
Yeah. So I have, this is a sort of a funny aside. This was around the time that Creighton College first got a telephone, 1885.
Okay.
Its first outbound call on record was to the home of John and Sarah Emily Creighton. John was not in. I can't confirm this 100%, but I'm pretty sure, given the timing of the call in the daily log, that there's a very good chance that the intended topic of Creighton University's first telephone call was asking John Creighton to buy this horse stable.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Creighton's first telephone number was 330, in case anybody's ever interrupted.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so just the three numbers.
Three numbers, yeah.
Interesting.
So we got that. We got an electric doorbell around the same time.
Is that right? Where was the doorbell on the main hall?
Doorbell on the main, on the main hall. So electricity was flowing through.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So it was, first call was like, "Will you buy this property from your brother-in-law you hate.
Okay.
But it didn't.
And he wasn't in?
He wasn't in. That was it.
Okay.
It was
they just had to leave a message.
They left a message with Sarah Emily who answered. Shortly after the misconnection, Creighton College president, Father Dowling, went to John Creighton to discuss the matter. I'm not sure if Dowling was the president yet, but he was the one who went to go talk to John Creighton.
Okay.
For 2 hours, Dowling listened to, quote, a catalog of grievances. John Creighton refused to pay that much for McCreary's property. So at this point, the Jesuits went back to McCreary with a counteroffer. They told him Creighton College would name the observatory the McCreary Observatory.
Wow.
If he gave them, quote, his obnoxious house.
His obnoxious house.
His obnoxious house.
That's great.
The following comes directly from the official daily log written by the Jesuits. Quote, McCreary did not answer, but went out to his farm to evade an answer. He clutches his money bag and asks for his pound of flesh.
Oh my gosh. They were very descriptive.
The logs are very
days.
descriptive. Oh,
yeah.
just wait.
It's interesting.
It's pretty graphic in some cases. So now we get to the manure.
Okay.
We come all
where
the way
we started.
back.
Okay.
We come all this podcast started with feces. It concludes with feces.
Okay.
While McCreary was trying to get Creighton and the Jesuits to pay for his land, and by extension, John Creighton,
yes,
he allowed a big pile of animal manure to accumulate along the campus farm property line. An apparent attempt to torment the students and Jesuit faculty. It would prove an extremely successful negotiating tactic.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. He just left a big pile of horse poop and cow poop, like just right on their front lawn. And how long do you think this went on, if you had to guess?
3 days.
2 years.
2 years. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't necessarily know the full timeline of the pile of manure.
Yeah.
But
you can imagine building up over 2 years, though.
Building up
That's
over 2 years.
a lot.
And to be fair, I guess I don't know quite how bad it smelled. I imagine it smelled pretty bad.
Oh my God.
It was 50 feet away from the front entrance.
Holy
cow. And they just
cow.
had to do it. And the Jesuits all lived there. Students were there all the time. So it was pretty bad.
Oh my gosh.
So the Jesuits at this point just say, Mr. Creighton, please.
Yeah.
and
McCreary
finally,
hasn't come down. He still wants the 20.
He still wants the 20,000, and he specifically wants it to come from his brother-in-law.
Oh, is that right? It has to come from John.
That seemingly, yeah. It had to be that it had to be from him.
Okay.
Which I just thought was, I don't know. They obviously had animosity towards each other. They also were, at this point, two of the biggest landowners in town, so there was probably some competition. But McCreary obviously was trolling him.
Yes.
Good for our founder and everything, but that's still a pretty funny troll, I have to admit. So in 1887, after the Jesuits went to John Creighton again, they re-entered negotiations. At long last, John Creighton finally agreed to buy the property from his brother-in-law.
Okay.
So there was quite a bit.
Did his brother-in-law up the price in the meantime?
Well, there was a bunch of back and forth.
There was.
It was kind of complex. Really, what it was in the end a trade of land.
A trade of land. Okay.
Yeah. So the way it worked was John Creighton agreed to exchange a $15,000 property he owned in downtown Omaha with his brother-in-law McCreary, and McCreary would give him the lot. And then McCreary came back and said, actually, I want another $5,000 from the Jesuits as like a bonus. I wasn't exactly sure the basis of it. They talked him down to $2,000. So in the end, he got $17,000 for the property. He paid $8,000 for it.
Maybe he wanted the extra to clear out the manure. There's going to be some work there to do to get it ready.
Oh, no, Creighton had to clear out the manure.
Is that right? He wouldn't even do that?
No, I think he just pieced out.
Oh, my gosh.
So in all, McCreary received more than twice what he paid for a few years prior.
Wow.
So immediately, the barn was raised, the fence was removed, the manure was cleaned up, and the animals were moved elsewhere to other stables.
Okay.
At the time of the sale, though, the McCreary house still had a tenant, Mr. Coburn, who was, as far as I can tell, one of the first sheriffs of Douglas County.
Is that right?
Lived in the house right across from us. Okay. So his lease him and his family lived there. His lease wasn't up yet. It ended a few months later, and then the college remodeled the house to be the first Jesuit residence external to the main building.
Is that right? It became the first Jesuit residence.
They lived in Creighton Hall. They had quarters in there.
They do now.
Sorry, the main building was what we're calling it, but Creighton Hall now. This was the first official external Jesuit residence. This was how I found out about the story. I'm doing research with the new Jesuit residence that's about to break ground, or already has broken ground, essentially. And as I was looking back through, I found out what the first Jesuit residence was, and it had this weird story.
That is fascinating. So how did you find this information?
It was entirely the university archive upstairs on the 5th floor.
They're amazing.
Yeah, they're really great. Good group of people.
Yeah.
They don't even know, people just don't even know how much stuff we still have in the collection and in the library throughout campus. So they do a really good job of taking care of all that stuff, and I'm grateful because otherwise I probably wouldn't have a job here. Because I think they just keep me around because I tell these funny, goofy stories that people click on. So I'm personally grateful to them.
This is great. So is there more to the story?
Oh, yeah, there's a little bit more to the story here. So I'm trying to think where I left off. So when Coburn's family's lease was up.
That's the sheriff.
The sheriff.
Okay.
They remodeled the college, vacated the house, and they remodeled it, and they made it the first Jesuit residence external to the main building, i.e. Creighton Hall.
Correct. In
1887, the Jesuit residence became the 4th campus building in Creighton's history. The second was a building called the Chemistry Lab, a small building that once stood where St. John's does now. The third was the observatory, and then the fourth was this Jesuit residence.
Did he get the observatory? He didn't get the observatory named after him, obviously.
He didn't get the name, but it would have been so funny if this guy that, the founder hated, or disliked, hated.
Right. And a member of the family.
And a member of the family was named after the observatory. The Jesuits were trying to get him to give his whole property for the naming rights.
Okay.
Yeah, or at least sell it at a really discounted rate. Okay. His obnoxious house. So the Jesuit residence didn't have an official name, but it was informally called the McCreary House. The Jesuits had to now live in a residence named after the man who tortured them with noxious smells for 2 years, all as part of a clever ploy to make a profit and troll his brother-in-law.
So it was the Jesuits who named it the McCreary House? Or they just kind of affectionately know?
I think it was just what it was referred to. In the records, they just say the McCreary House. It just, over time, became its name.
Okay.
I don't think it was ever officially named that.
Okay. Probably Frosted John Creighton.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think he liked any mention of the man's name. He also supposedly, I think he had gotten back in touch with Creighton with the college as soon as he had made this deal, and just was, I think, pretty salty that he did it and immediately regretted it. And so he felt like somebody had gotten one over on him, which they
did.
Yeah. So in a way, McCreary's torment of the Jesuits was just beginning. Here are a few highlights from the historical daily log from the first year the Jesuits lived in the McCreary House.
Okay, so now he sold the property.
He sold the property.
And the Jesuits are living there.
The Jesuits are living there.
And he's still getting back at them.
He's basically still torturing them through just how poor repair and trashy the house was.
Got it. Okay.
And some other things.
Okay.
But, it wasn't a very good house.
Okay.
Quote, this is from the Daily Law.
Okay.
Quote, residence trembles in the storm. Father McGinnis reported his bed rocking like a hammock at sea. Quote, blizzard, radiators out of order. Quote, Mr. Donaher woke up chilled and with diarrhea.
Oh, no. Well, you never want that to happen.
No. Quote, Father O'Meara, sick, cold and fever. Quote, Mr. Mara moved over to his little room in new residence, but a dead rat under the floor drove him back to the main building.
Oh, my gosh.
Quote, Father Riggy, this would have been Joseph Riggy, not William Riggy.
Okay.
So not the astronomer.
Astronomer of fame, yep.
His older brother.
Okay.
Father Riggy moved into new residence yesterday. Got headaches from bad smell.
It wasn't the manure? We don't know.
Something.
I hate to speculate on that. Yeah.
So next day, quote, Father Riggy sick, cannot teach. Day after that, Father Riggy moves back to college building. And this is the final entry I jotted down. Quote, Christmas Day, steam pipes burst in residence. Faculty suffering from cold invited to stay in college.
Oh, my gosh.
So it was not a good house.
It was not a good place for the Jesuits.
It's not. Not all of Creighton's Jesuits stayed in the McCreary House, but the ones living in the college apparently didn't have it much better. Around this time, Sarah Emily Creighton, John Creighton's wife, visited campus and found the Jesuit living quarters to be primitive and just unacceptable.
And this is in the main hall, which we now call Creighton Hall, which was the administration building. Okay.
And the main building at the time.
This is the main building at the time.
So I don't know the arrangement of their living quarters in the very beginning. It's just
Okay.
I just know they were in the building. I
Yeah.
think they were on the second or third floor.
Okay.
And granted, those early years there were 5, 6, 7 Jesuits there, so it wasn't a big space.
Okay.
They didn't need a lot.
Yep.
She was kind of appalled by how they were living. I believe she saw the McCreary House too.
Okay.
So she said she wanted better accommodations for the men leading Creighton College. So she and John made a gift of $13,000 to add a south wing to the main building where the Jesuits could establish a new, better, more healthy living quarters.
Okay. Great.
So kind of in a roundabout way, the poor quality of McCreary's house led to the development
Of a better main hall.
Yeah.
And this would not be, just so I'm getting it right, it would not be the south of the main, or the Creighton Hall building now, which is that Art Deco facade.
Yeah,
this is something different.
It'd be immediate. It's the chunk immediately north of that facade. So
Okay.
behind that facade, essentially,
Okay.
was a different part of older Creighton. And then I think I can't remember the exact year, but the 1930s, we got that extra facade.
Right. So just so people know, as you're kind of going back into the Jesuit gardens on the east side, Creighton Hall, or the main building, or the administration building, depending on when you were here, that is facing to the east, and you can even see the entryway on that eastern door that says Creighton above it. And then we built on that facade that faces the campus mall and faces to the south.
Yeah, I mean,
But this was much later.
we built on it. It was so small, we basically built on it in pretty much every direction except east.
Okay.
But it just grew, especially to the north and south. Creighton Hall just grew and grew and grew.
Okay.
And I believe it's a very old building now. And
Yes.
beautiful, but, always hard to manage. And I would say probably the second, this is a question for you, as somebody who's a long time at Creighton.
Yeah.
Is Creighton Hall or St. John's Creighton's, most notable building?
I would say both of them together.
Okay.
What I like is when I look at the photographs, if there's a photograph with St. John's and Creighton Hall / administration building / main in the picture, like that is the iconic
You got to have them both.
Creighton. Yes, that's what I see when I envision that's the iconic Creighton.
In the fountain.
And the fountain,
Yeah,
right.
that
Yeah.
helps as well. Yeah,
Yes.
I always think that every stock photo I use of Creighton, you got to have those.
Right.
Because you can show, the other stuff is becoming iconic, but there's just, they're the only thing that was here before 1900. Not the fountain, but.
Yeah. St. John's administration building and, all the construction that's happened after that's been great. But when you think about the main campus, those are the two buildings that come right to your mind. And I think it's, interesting to even see that Creighton etched in that doorway to the east. That's kind of that arched doorway. I think that's just really interesting to still have that as part of our campus and to be able to see that.
Yeah, we do. I have read a lot of marketing copy.
Yes.
hopefully okay at it. And one of the things I think Creighton's campus itself serves as like a good metaphor for is we are such a mixture of old and new, of the traditional and the bold. And when you see those really kind of new progressive architecture throughout campus juxtaposed to things that are as classic and well retained as Creighton Hall and St. John's, it's good. It makes my job easy. I can just talk about the architecture.
Yeah, and I think that's what you love about a university is the history and tradition of it. This is the quirky news and it's interesting about the Manure and the house across the street and the farmyard across the street, but we do have that rich tradition and the blend of the new with the construction that's going on now. So I think that's really important and a really rich part of our history is we've got that, got
absolutely.
that here. So
yeah, I think it's good. One thing I like with this podcast is we still want to talk about the good things about Creighton too, along with the weird. But I think the weird things grounded in a more human way. I don't know.
Absolutely.
It reveals the eccentricity, and I don't know, maybe makes it seem a little bit more authentic.
Yeah, it's the personality of the place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It gives it the humanness of
absolutely.
it when you hear these kind of little stories like this. And I'm wondering if John Creighton invited his brother-in-law over for Thanksgiving dinner and what those conversations were like. Did they keep that down in the Creighton log, or is that not? They
didn't have that. The only thing that I found later about them was that, let's see, McCreary's grandson or multiple grandsons were pallbearers at John Creighton's funeral. So there was enough.
So maybe they had patched up a little bit.
Patched up, but there were some lawsuits and will disputes along the way too. So that's, I couldn't even understand it all. There was just a lot of stuff because there was a big fortune left behind.
Sure.
Request.
Sure.
So let's see. I think I'm just about done here.
Okay.
John and Sarah Emily.
Fascinating story, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was saying this is the reason I want to do the podcast because I was like, this is how it is. I usually come to your office and I just tell you this stuff. And I was like, let's just put a microphone in between.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, granted, we're talking about other stuff too. We're probably being a little bit more respectable and formal in this. So, and hopefully our friendship will be captured more accurately on audio. In 1889, the south wing of what is now Creighton Hall was completed and occupied by the Jesuit faculty and staff as their new quarters. The McCreary House was sold for $900 cash on the condition that it be removed immediately.
It was sold for $900?
As long as somebody took it away. They didn't tear it down. I don't know where it went. Somebody moved it.
They didn't just demolish it.
They didn't just demolish it. It was moved. There was a description of its removal. I don't know where it went to.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know who bought it or where it went to, but it was gone. So maybe the bones of that house live on in Omaha somewhere today.
That is great.
Yeah.
Amazing story.
Yeah. So that's the story.
That's great.
Yeah. Hopefully, this tale of Manure makes you feel a little closer to Creighton, even though you've been here now 30 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, there's these little stories like that just give the place the personality. Mm-hmm. And I love it. And I had not heard of this story before.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be the thing I want to do. I want to try to stump you.
Yeah.
And then I want to there'll be things about that I'm hoping I find details you haven't heard of.
Well, I'm grateful for bringing this story to me today. I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. I always try to bring you the stories about Manure. So, again, before we wrap up our first and probably last episode of
I hope not. No, this is going to go great.
It's great. Big hit. Thousands of listeners. Before we wrap up, I wanted to offer a big shout out again to the Creighton University Archive.
They're wonderful. Amazing folks.
They're great. They're absolutely great. And whoever manages their salaries, please give them raises.
Yeah.
So there's two other things I wanted to note before we go.
Yep.
If you, potential listener, know some weird Creighton history, or even just some interesting or little known Creighton history that might make for a good episode, please share it with me. You can reach me at micahmertes@creighton.edu. Again, that's MICAHMERTES @creighton.edu. And the last thing I wanted to mention was, did you know for this first episode that nobody knows about, we have an official sponsor?
No, I didn't know about that. Who is it?
I've been working.
Is this a joke?
No, not at all. I've been working behind the scenes, just doing a lot of deals. I've just been getting Weird Creighton History's name out there.
Okay, let's hear it.
This episode of Weird Creighton History was brought to you by Creighton Days, the fun-filled, family-friendly 4-day-long celebration taking place on our Omaha campus from September 29th through October 2nd. You can register now for Creighton Days at alumni.creighton.edu/Creighton-Days. Rick, do you know about Creighton Days?
I know about Creighton Days. I'm looking forward to it. It should be great.
What are you most looking forward to?
Meeting up with old friends, and that's always a great time to meet up with classmates, get to know what they're doing, hear about their families. It's always a good time.
Sponsor asked me to note, this is not just for alumni celebrating milestone years, though there are plenty of special things for those folks, but it's for everyone. It's 4 days of class parties, food, live music, fireworks, a soccer game, and an event with Creighton President Father Hendrickson. Again, you can register at alumni.creighton.edu/Creighton-Days.
And there will be no manure along 24th Street. Are we promising that?
I can't promise that, although maybe we can add it just as a source of nostalgia.
As the source of nostalgia, right.
No, Creighton smells pretty good these days.
It does.
So I would highly recommend everybody come back for a reunion.
It should be great.
Won't have too many bad smells. All right, well, Rick, this was a fun experiment.
It was awesome.
I hope it goes
somewhere.
Continues. Hope it continues. For whoever may have been listening, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it, Micah.